Well, this is something that hits close to home with me. Taxstone was recently found guilty of manslaughter and some gun charges. He did beat the murder charge, which was the big one, but he's still facing, according to his attorney, up to 25 years. He's already served 6, so in a worst case, we're looking at 19 more years. In this particular case, I know Tax. Me and him were actually friends. We actually did his last interview before he got locked up. Something I never put out because I was worried that it might somehow come in and bite him. When you look at this case and him being found guilty, were you surprised?
No. I mean, maybe you could say you're surprised that he's not charged with murder, but I mean, he did shoot that bodyguard Banger, right? And then let's take a step back. You know, kind of what happened. You've got your man Taxstone walks up into a venue, and I believe it was in New York. And New York is not like Georgia, man. I mean, everybody in Georgia got guns. And New York is not that way. It's my understanding that New York is very serious with the guns. And it seemed like from the evidence, he was trying to get into the venue without being searched because he had the gun. So he wanted to get into this venue with a weapon. So you were already starting off on the right foot. It looked like he was actively avoiding spots where they were searching. And so he goes in to this venue and armed, right? And apparently he sees this gentleman, Troy Ave, and Troy Ave has his bodyguard Banger with him. Now, you know, you can say that it's he say in terms of how it all started. But at the end of the day, this gun that your man brought in, you know, it's used to kill one person. And I think, you know, he shot 2 other people. Now, originally, Troy Ave I think he was arrested and charged as well until more of the facts came out. So I think manslaughter, it sounds to me like that's kind of what should have happened. Or how do you see it? Were you surprised about it?
Well, the thing about this case, and, you know, I've had conversations, you know, with the lawyer, and me and Taxstone talked as well. You know, it's very key what you said, like, this is not Georgia. This is New York. This is not Florida, which Florida has a stand your ground law. The problem with this particular case was, you know, from what I know about it personally, was Troy Ave was out there using Banger to go beat people up who had talked negatively about him. There's a video of this where I Love McConan, who's this gay rapper who was signed to Drake, ends up getting beat up on stage because he had made a comment to Troy Ave, and Troy Ave said, "Hey, when we see you in New York, it's on." And sure enough, his man goes and beats this guy up. There was a journalist who got beat up also because he had said something negatively about Troy Ave. Troy Ave even threatened me over a text message because I wouldn't play his music or something dumb. Wow. You know, he's basically was out there pushing the line on people and so forth. But unfortunately, in New York, in this particular case, I found out you can't actually use the background of a victim in a murder. So they can bring up the fact that Banger was out there beating people up and so forth. And Taxstone in the situation was probably worried about his safety because here's this guy who has a reputation of beating people up and he's worried about his own safety. So he may have pulled out a gun as a self-protection kind of situation. That was never brought up to the jury, and that was just not admissible in a court of law. And that, to me, is kind of the saddest part about this case, because I think that had it gone to Florida, I mean, look at the Trayvon Martin situation. You got a guy who actively pursued this young man, actively pursued him, you know, with a weapon, who's this underage young kid that wasn't doing anything. And in the process of the tussle, he somehow walks away and was found not guilty because it's stand your ground.
Yeah.
You know, Taxstone was already there minding his own business when Troy Ave came in, and based on Troy Ave taking the stand, his man was like, "I'm going to go punch him." And he's like, "Yeah, go ahead and do it." So it was established that Troy Ave and Banger were the aggressors, and Taxstone was basically defending himself in this case, but someone ended up dead, and now it got painted as, oh, it's the other way around. Here's this guy who was a hater and is out here causing trouble, and someone got killed. But if you look at the real situation, it is very different, but it is New York, and it is not the South, where things are very different. So to me, it was really heartbreaking. But from what I understand in this case, and once again, talking to the lawyer and looking at some of the paperwork, the biggest problem in the case was Taxstone had a phone at Rikers Island, and some of his messages ended up getting caught and presented to the jury, and some of his messages and correspondence actually has him talking about what he did in the case. And when that was brought to the jury, it was very hard to get over that. As well as, let me just finish, his friend Casanova Two Times, who I know as well, who was there after the situation happened. He called up a friend and said, oh, Taxstone just let off his gun, not knowing that the friend he's calling had his phone tapped because he's being watched by the authorities for some other situation. So once again, this was brought to the jury, and it was two very, very difficult things to get over.
Yeah, that's very difficult to get over. I will absolutely give you that. I do want to say, though, your point about Troy Ave using his bodyguard to go beat up people, and you can't really use that in a trial, right? That's very, very common. And most people think that that's a good rule, because if you don't have that rule, your trials are going to start getting out of hand. First of all, let's assume that the bodyguard banger was going out and beating up people and this and that, right? The trial is about whether Taxstone shot this man in the chest, right? It's not about what Banger has done in 2013, 2014, 2015. And so you can start, if you start introducing this evidence, you can start having like a trial within a trial. Did he really beat that dude up in 2013 and 2012? What were the circumstances of that? Was he justified in getting in that altercation? And so now you're talking about what Banger has done in 2012, and we're totally not talking about whether he was shot in the chest, right? So you have some relevancy issues there. And then, also you have some prejudice issues. A lot of evidence that is relevant is kept out of the courtroom because it's prejudicial. And it could absolutely be that you are victimized, but a jury doesn't like you. And so the jury does not give you justice. If you're in a car accident and you should get, let's say, $1 million, but the jury doesn't like you, the jury might only give you $100,000 or $200,000. It's kind of based on how juries feel. If this man gets shot in the chest by your boy, and you start introducing all of this evidence, showing, how he's going around beating up people and how he's basically the attack dog of this guy, a few members of the jurors might be like, well, you know what? Yeah, he got shot in the chest, but he was beating up other people. So you know what? Fuck him. I'm gonna assume that this world is better off without people like him. So I don't care if we find this guy guilty or not, because he shouldn't have been out beating up people. That's another problem that you have when you introduce prejudicial evidence saying, hey, this guy is going around beating up people. You want to keep that out of the trial, because this Banger guy, he could absolutely be aggressive. He could absolutely be violent, but he could be a victim at the same time. But if it's a prejudicial, a lot of times the jurors will not want to recognize the fact that he's a victim. And then also, and this is actually a huge issue with men and women and sex. A lot of times women they'll make up false charges against a man saying that, I don't want to say the R word, but let's just say that this man sexually violated her. And the government wants a woman to be able to get on the phone and call 911 if the woman even suspects that she was violated. So it could be a situation where, I'm with a girl and we're doing our thing, and in the middle she's like, oh, I'm not really feeling it, and I just keep going, right? Well, that's a violation because I was supposed to stop. A lot of men want it to where if a woman makes false allegations against a man, then the woman should go to prison, which she should. But what happens if I'm a woman and I say, well, I think I was violated, and if I go and tell the cops this and there's a trial, if I lose, then I'm going to go to prison. If I go to prison for this, then it's just better for me to take the L, because I got these 2 kids by these 2 random dudes and I need to support them. So I'm going to take the L, and I got violated. This is what also happens in cases where you try to introduce this reputational evidence. If I am Banger and I get shot, let's say, but I survive, but I get shot, I could wonder, well, should I call the police if I know that in the trial they're going to bring up all of my dirty laundry, they're going to pull out all of my skeletons? I'm going to be put on trial even though I was the one who was victimized. A lot of people will say, it's just not worth it. So in the law, we call that a chilling effect. The law never wants to create a dynamic where people are disincentivized to call the law. So for those reasons, a lot of character evidence is just kept out. The jury is not going to hear about Banger being used as, like you say, a crash dummy, beating up all those people. Now, if you can show during the actual day, during the event, Banger stepped up and was the aggressor, then that absolutely comes in. So if you can show at the time that he was doing this, that's one thing. But if you're leaning back to what happened in 2015, 14, and 13, the judge really isn't going to let it in.
Yeah, well, I think that when Troy Ave took the stand, he actually admitted that Banger and him were the aggressors. And ultimately, I think that's what allowed Taxstone to beat the murder case, and it turned into manslaughter, meaning that he didn't want to kill him, but he was attacked, and then, something happened with the gun and someone ended up dead. But
I didn't hear it that way.
I feel like
the way I heard it was that your man came in and he had the gun and he was like, what's up? The way I heard from Troy Ave was saying is, hey, I was here.
Well, that's Troy Ave's version of the story.
Right. So that's the thing.
But I know people that were actually there, and Taxstone was there for a very long time before Troy Ave ever came in. He was basically there minding his own business. And then when they came in, that's when the problem started.
Gotcha.
And like I said, Troy Ave even admitted on the stand that he looked at his man and was like, oh, I'm going to punch him. He's like, yeah, go ahead. And it's like, to me, this is crazy because I have bodyguards as well, right? I have armed bodyguards that I take out with me, and so forth. I would never go send my bodyguard to go attack somebody. That is insane to me. That is asking for untold problems because now I am now the aggressor. I'm using my bodyguard as a weapon as opposed to a defense mechanism, which is, to me, the only reason why I would have a bodyguard, to make sure I get home safe. It's not to go beat up people I don't like or shoot people that I don't like, and that to me is why I feel the way I do. And regardless of, I understand your point as well, in terms of, past, prejudicial evidence and so forth. But like I said, I feel if this had happened in Florida, it'd be a totally different outcome. It would be a stand your ground. I was attacked. I had to defend myself. I had a weapon on me. And unfortunately, this is what happened.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the jurisdiction that the case takes place, it absolutely makes a huge difference. So you're absolutely right about that.
Yep.